Good morning, students. This is another video on communication. In my previous videos, I have separately described what is communication, what is formal communication, what is informal communication, and nonverbal communication. In this video, I will exclusively discuss on the barriers to effective communication. Now, first of all, we need to understand what are barriers. The barriers are basically problems or obstacles that may come and create problem in the communication process. Barriers are situational and always play a negative role in the communication process. So, it is highly required to remove any kind of barriers from communication process so that the sender can effectively send the message to the receiver, and at the other end the receiver can also receive and decode the message effectively to derive the best meaning out of this message. So, to make the communication process successful, barriers play a very important role. Now, we need to know what are these different types of barriers. The first one is physical barrier. Physical barriers consist of any sound that prevents a person from being heard. Physical noise interferes with a speaker's ability to send message and with an audience ability to receive them. Apart from noise, there are other also factors which are treated as physical barriers, and all these factors play very important role in communication process. Uh, let's give an example. Okay, suppose one teacher is taking class in the classroom. The teacher is delivering a lecture standing on the dais, and all the students are sitting in front of the teacher. Now, all the ceiling fans of the classroom are moving very fast at the highest speed, and all the fans are generating a mechanical sound, a metallic sound. The students who are sitting at the lower end or at the furthest corner of the classroom, they are not able to listen the lecture of the teacher as there is a mechanical noise from the ceiling fans. So, noise plays a very important role in creating barrier in communication. Then, time and distance. These two factors can play the role of a physical barrier in the communication process. Uh, as an example, I can tell you, like in the same example, the teacher is taking class standing on the dais, and the students who are sitting at the farthest corner or the at the lower end of the classroom, they are not able to listen to the lecture of the teacher. But the students who are sitting at the front lines, or in spite of having the mechanical sound of the ceiling fans, they are quite able to listen to what the teacher is saying. But the students who are sitting at the lower end, they are not able to hear the teacher properly. So, distance matters. The distance between the students who are sitting at the last bench of the classroom, the distance is quite large. But the students who are sitting at the front benches, distance between the front side benches and the teacher is quite low. So, if the distance between the speaker and the receiver is low, then it doesn't create problem. But if the distance is too high, if the distance is too high and the receiver is standing too far from the speaker, then obviously it will create a physical barrier, and the listener or the audience or the receiver may not be able to listen to the speaker effectively. So these are all the physical barriers of the communication system. Okay. Uh, one physical barrier may be the medium the medium which is used to convey the message, to share the message, may play a negative role. Like if I send one message to one of my best friend by uh, typing a few words through WhatsApp, and if eventually the internet connectivity of my friend's place is not that good, or if the data pack of my friend has expired, then in that case my friend will not be able to view the message which is sent through WhatsApp. So the message which is so the medium, not the message, so the medium which is opted by the sender is inaccurate, and it is creating problem in communication. So a wrong medium can work as a physical barrier to communication. Okay, next, the semantic barrier. When barriers are related to language or uh, the meaning of message, then they are called linguistic or semantic barrier. Suppose an unclear message may work as a semantic barrier. An unclear message lacks clarity or precision. It is poorly expressed due to wrong words which is chosen by the sender. It may be due to inadequate vocabulary. It may be due to wrong organizing of ideas, or poor sentence structure, or faulty transmission. So all these factors can contribute to semantic barriers, or due to these problems, the receiver may not be able to understand what the message is all about. Then, faulty translation. Sometimes the translation of a message is not proper, and this fault leads to misinterpretation of the message. Sometimes the non-technical people would hardly be able to understand the technical jargons which are used by the speaker, by the sender in the conversation. Hence, it is better to avoid jargons in common conversation. Okay, so any problem which is related to language, it may create semantic barrier. If there is a difference in language, then obviously it will not be able to generate any understanding to the receiver. So any problem which is related to language is called the linguistic or semantic barrier, and it is one of the most important factors which are considered as a barrier to communication. Then, psychological barriers. Psychological barriers are also very important and plays a very influential role in conveying the message effectively. Suppose think of a situation when there is no physical barrier. I mean, there is no sound. The place is absolutely silent, poised, and serene. Suppose there is no linguistic barrier. I mean, the person who is communicating with the other person is quite familiar with the language. Still, the conversation may fail due to the psychological barriers. Okay, so it is very important to know what are these psychological barriers. Uh, Sometimes the emotional states or feelings of the person who is communicating or with whom the communication is done may create psychological barriers. The emotional states of receiver and sender influence the communication process. Extreme emotions like anger, depression, etc., may have a negative impact on the way of communication. So, personal emotions are termed as a psychological barrier. Sometimes, inattention, communication becomes less effective if people do not pay the required amount of attention. So, if the sender develops a understanding or a feeling that the person with whom he is communicating is not listening to his words carefully, then definitely it will create a negative a message in his mind and will definitely hamper the communication process. So, inattention is a psychological barrier. Then prejudice. Prejudice is termed as a preconceived idea or notion about something. So, if we have any preconceived idea or notion about a particular thing, then it will act as a blockage, mind blockage, and due to this closed minds, it will be very hard to make these people uh, change his mind or realized about a particular thought. Then difference in perception. Different individual perceive the same thing in a different way or differently due to different of environments. Okay. Then like poor attention. Poor attention in the sense, if a person do not remember things, he forgets all the time the important informations. So it will be very difficult for a person to communicate with a person who is having poor retention skill. So all these factors may contribute jointly to develop a psychological barrier. uh, I may give you some other examples like the halo effect, the horn effect. All these factors also play important role in psychological barrier. What is this halo effect? When we judge a individual on the basis of only one positive impression or positive characteristics, and depending on that positive characteristics, all his negative qualities are ignored. Suppose uh, a manager is giving rating one of his junior uh, in a positive way only because that person is very regular. He hardly takes leave in the organization, but apart from his regularity in the workplace, that person is extremely like irresponsible, and he doesn't show any intention of developing new thoughts or contributing new ideas in the workplace, and he is not at all enthusiastic to work hard. So all these factors are negative factors, but as the individual is very regular, his immediate manager is developing a idea or a concept that as he is regular in his workplace, he must be a good candidate or competent candidate or competent employee for the organization. So this is a halo effect, and it may create communication problem. That means when this manager will share feedback about that employee with the other employees of the organization, he may refer this employee as a very competent or positive employee, where the employee is not actually. Then horn effect. Horn effect is just the opposite of halo effect. When we rate one employee depending on his one very negative point or negative characteristics, and when we ignore all his positive or potential characteristics, this is called the horn effect. Suppose one employee is very short tempered, ill tempered, and only because of his this behavior, he is ill tempered or short tempered in workplace, all his positive characteristics are ignored. Like he is a punctual employee, he is a very competent employee, he has a very sound technical knowledge in workplace. So all these positive aspects are ignored. This is called the horn effect. Whenever his boss will share any feedback about that employee with others, he will share a negative impact or negative response or negative feedback. So this will create a barrier in communication. This is called the horn effect. Okay, so all these factors will work as psychological barrier in the communication process. Ego. Ego state of mind. Ego is a particular state of mind which creates problem in communication. Ego gives us a sense of superiority, and persons who are having a very strong ego, that person may develop an attitude that I am the best or my views are the best viewpoints. So ego state of mind actually creates blockage, mental blockage, and for this reason ego is uh, termed as a psychological barrier in communication. Okay. Then the socio-cultural barriers. Socio-cultural barriers are basically tells about our body language, our uh, etiquettes, our mannerism, our proximity to the speaker, etc. An individual can be a carrier of culture, but one person cannot create culture. By participating in a culture, we are conforming to social norms, whether implicitly or um, explicitly. Similarly, there are norms in communication too, like gestures, the meaning of a color, tone of speech, and meaning of symbols. Okay, so all those factors are relating to socio-cultural barriers. If I give you some examples, suppose you are just entering the organization, and whenever you are seeing your boss is coming towards you, you are saying, "Good morning, sir." But after you are saying good morning to your boss is not reciprocating to you. So you will immediately develop a negative feeling about your boss, and it will create a communication barrier. Okay. Or think of a situation when a student has just entered the interview table. The interviewer is asking the student to come in and sit down on the chair. The student has just sat down on the chair, but he is sitting crossing his leg. Okay, and this particular body gesture will immediately give a wrong message to the interviewer. The interviewer will not anyway select that particular candidate, because this particular body posture is giving a like message that this particular student is very arrogant in his nature. So our body language expresses lots of information, which may also uh, relates our cultural background, our societal background, and for that reason it is called socio-cultural barriers. Okay, proximity. Proximity means how far I will come to the speaker as a listener, as an audience, or as a receiver, how close I can come to the speaker. If I come too close, then the speaker may not feel very comfortable to speak. So we should have an idea about the proximity. All these factors are related to cultural barriers of communication. So it is highly important to be aware about these facts, and we should take precautionary measure to avoid misconception, and uh, we should be very careful so that this particular body gesture, body movements, or particular mental blockage may not create any communication barrier, so that our communication becomes successful. So, communication barriers, if we summarize, then communication barriers are basically the problems that may come and create uh, misunderstanding in the mind of the receiver. And we can broadly categorize the communication barriers into four types. One is the physical barrier, like noise, time and distance, wrong selection of media, etc. Then the linguistic or semantic barrier, where the use of jargons or like faulty translation or unclear message itself, or the difference in language, all these factors contribute to create semantic or linguistic barrier. Then the psychological barrier. In the psychological barrier, there are lots of factors like the personal feelings or emotions, inattention of the speaker, prejudice, halo effects, horn effects, difference in perception, poor retention capability of the speaker. All these factors contribute to create psychological barriers. And lastly, the socio-cultural barriers, like the wrong sense of proximity of the speaker uh, or the receiver, or inadequate body language or improper body language, body gesture, body posture, and the lack of mannerism and etiquette. All these factors can contribute to create socio-cultural barriers. So while communicating with others, we should be very careful and attentive, so that we can remove the communication barriers from our communication and can make the communication process successful. Okay, listen to this video very carefully, as this is a very important topic related to communication. If you have any doubt after viewing this video, you can ask me directly in the class. Okay, so we'll come with the other videos on communication, but till then have a look on this video. Okay, bye.